What do you do when the person who promised to build a future with you decides to demolish it in front of everyone you know? When the celebration of a new life becomes the funeral for a shared one. This is the story of Eliza, a woman who was handed the most public betrayal imaginable at the most vulnerable moment of her life. Her husband, Mark, didn't just break her heart. He tried to shatter her spirit on the day of their baby shower. But he made one critical mistake. He and everyone else had mistaken her quiet grace for weakness. They were about to learn that the calmest waters often hide the most formidable currents, and that a woman's strength, once awakened, can reshape the world. The scene was picture-perfect, almost painfully so. A sprawling garden, bathed in the soft gold of a late afternoon sun. Pastel blue and pink balloons danced in the gentle breeze, tethered to white wicker chairs. Laughter floated through the air, light and sweet as the frosting on the three-tiered cake that sat as a centerpiece, proclaiming "Welcome, little one" in elegant silver script. Eliza, radiant in a flowing cerulean dress that hugged the perfect curve of her 7-month belly, moved through the crowd of friends and family with a gentle smile. She touched an arm here, shared a quiet laugh there, her eyes shining with the deep, contented joy of a woman on the cusp of realizing her most cherished dream. To an outsider, she was the picture of fulfillment. But beneath the serene surface, a tiny, persistent hum of anxiety vibrated within her. Mark was late. Again. It had become a pattern, a series of small, almost imperceptible tears in the fabric of their marriage. Late nights at the office, he couldn't quite explain. Hushed phone calls he'd end the moment she entered the room, a subtle distance that felt like a chasm opening between them. She'd try to talk to him, but he'd always wave it away with a charming smile. "Just stress, honey. This new project is a beast," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "You just focus on you and our baby. I've got everything else handled," and she had tried to believe him. She wanted to. She had poured her entire being into creating this life, this home, this future. She had set aside her own ambitions, her sharp intellect, to support his. His success, she believed, was their success. Her father, the formidable business magnate Mr. Chin, watched her from a distance, his expression unreadable behind a pair of expensive sunglasses. He had never fully approved of Mark, seeing him as a charming but ultimately shallow opportunist. Yet, for Eliza's happiness, he had not only tolerated him, but had bankrolled Mark's boutique marketing firm, propping it up with his own capital and connections. He saw the flicker of worry in his daughter's eyes, a shadow that had no place at a celebration like this. He watched his son-in-law's mother, a woman dripping in jewelry paid for by his own generosity, hold court near the gift table, her voice just a little too loud, her compliments to Eliza just a little too saccharine. The air, for all its festive warmth, was thick with a tension only a few could sense. It was the quiet before a storm, the last peaceful moment before a carefully constructed world was brought crashing down. Eliza placed a hand on her belly, the baby kicking as if sensing her unease. "It's okay, little one," she whispered, her smile unwavering for her guests. "Daddy's just running late." But as the minutes stretched into an hour, and the sun began to dip lower, casting long, ominous shadows across the perfect lawn, the hum of anxiety within her grew into a deafening roar. Then she saw him. At the edge of the garden, striding onto the lawn. A wave of relief washed over her, so potent it almost made her dizzy. But the relief was fleeting, instantly replaced by a cold, sickening dread. He wasn't alone. The cheerful chatter in the garden faltered, then died completely. The light, airy music drifting from the hidden speakers suddenly seemed jarring, then it too was silenced as if by a collective, unspoken command. Every head turned. Every pair of eyes fixed on the entrance to the lawn, where Mark stood, finally arrived. But he was not the contrite, late husband bearing a bouquet of flowers and an apology. He was a harbinger of ruin. Beside him, her hand tucked possessively into the crook of his arm, was a woman Eliza had never seen before. She was beautiful in a sharp, angular way that was the stark opposite of Eliza's soft grace. And she was pregnant. Not subtly so. Her condition was as pronounced, as advanced as Eliza's own. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. It was a sound of disbelief, of scandal, of pure, unadulterated shock. Friends who had just been congratulating Eliza now stared, their mouths agape. Family members exchanged horrified glances. Mark's own mother's smile froze on her face, a grotesque mask of surprise that quickly morphed into something else, something calculating. Eliza felt the world tilt on its axis. The blood drained from her face, leaving her skin feeling cold and tight. The vibrant colors of the party, the soft blues, the warm pinks, the verdant green of the grass, all bled into a dull, nauseating gray. Her hand, which had been resting on her baby, now clenched into a fist against the fabric of her dress. She could feel the frantic thumping of her own heart, a wild drumbeat of betrayal against her ribs. She looked at Mark, searching his face for some sign of madness, of a terrible mistake. But she found none. His expression was not one of shame or regret. It was one of defiant resolution. He met her gaze across the stunned silence of their guests, and in his eyes, she saw not the man she had loved, but a stranger. A cruel, cold stranger who had chosen this moment, this sacred celebration of their future, to publicly execute it. He and the woman, Isabella, began to walk forward, their steps slow and deliberate, a funereal procession through the wreckage of what was supposed to be the happiest day of Eliza's life. They didn't stop at the edge of the crowd. They walked directly toward the center of the garden, toward the cake, toward the gift table, toward Eliza herself. With every step they took, the silence deepened, becoming heavy, suffocating. Eliza felt hundreds of eyes on her waiting for her to scream, to cry, to collapse. They were waiting for the hysteria, the drama they expected from a wife so brutally and publicly humiliated. Her own mother-in-law was now watching her with a glint of cruel anticipation. She wanted Eliza to break. Mark wanted her to break. It was the role they had assigned her. The fragile, heartbroken victim. But as Mark and his pregnant lover came to a stop just a few feet in front of her, something inside Eliza shifted. The initial shock receded, and in its place, a strange and terrible clarity began to dawn. A cold, hard resolve solidified in her veins, turning her fear into ice. She would not give them the satisfaction. Mark cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead silence. He held Isabella's hand tighter, raising it slightly as if presenting a trophy. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice strained but firm, laced with a shocking lack of remorse. "I know this isn't how you expected today to go. But there's something you all need to know." "Something Eliza needs to know," he paused, letting the weight of his unspoken words hang in the air, a deliberate act of cruelty. He glanced at Eliza, a flicker of something, pity or perhaps contempt, in his eyes. "Isabella and I are in love," he declared. The words, simple and direct, were like stones thrown into the quiet garden, shattering the last vestiges of decorum. A fresh wave of murmurs and gasps swept through the crowd. "She is also carrying my child," Mark continued, his voice gaining confidence. "We are going to be a family." He delivered the line as if it were a triumphant announcement, not a confession of profound betrayal. He seemed to believe that by stating his intentions so boldly, he could somehow control the narrative, framing his infidelity as a grand romance and Eliza's role as a mere obstacle that had now been cleared. He expected tears. He expected a scene. His mother, who had recovered from her initial surprise, now wore a look of smug vindication. She had always considered Eliza too quiet, too placid for her ambitious son. In her twisted view, this display of dominance was proof of Mark's strength. She looked at Eliza, her eyes cold and challenging, waiting for the inevitable emotional breakdown that would prove her right. But the breakdown never came. Eliza stood motionless, a statue carved from ice and sorrow. She did not look at Mark. Her gaze drifted past him, past the shocked faces of her friends, and settled on Isabella. She studied the other woman, not with hatred, but with a chilling, analytical calm. She saw the nervous pride in Isabella's eyes, the possessive way she held onto Mark's arm, the triumphant tilt of her chin. Isabella believed she had won. She had secured the man, the lifestyle, the future she coveted. Eliza then allowed her gaze to travel to her mother-in-law, meeting the older woman's malevolent stare without flinching. For a fleeting second, she let her see the pain, but it was immediately encased in a sheath of steel. Finally, her eyes found her father. Mr. Chin had not moved from his spot. His sunglasses were off now, and his face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. He was watching her, his eyes asking a silent question. Not, "Are you okay?" but, "What will you do now?" In that silent, searing glance between father and daughter, a lifetime of unspoken understanding passed. He had warned her, in his own way, about Mark's character. And now he was waiting to see if the daughter he had raised, the one he knew possessed a will of iron beneath her gentle exterior, would emerge. A profound stillness settled over Eliza. The roaring in her ears subsided. The world sharpened back into focus. She took a slow, deliberate breath, drawing strength from the very air that was thick with her humiliation. She raised her chin, her posture regal, her expression unreadable. She finally turned her eyes back to Mark, and when she spoke, her voice was not the broken sob everyone expected. It was clear, steady, and cut through the tension like a shard of glass. "Thank you, Mark," she said, each word precise and devoid of emotion. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are." In front of everyone who matters, the simplicity of her statement was more devastating than any scream could have been. It wasn't an accusation, it was a verdict. The sheer, unexpected composure in Eliza's voice sent a ripple of unease through the garden. Mark's confident smirk faltered. This was not the reaction he had prepared for. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind, envisioning a dramatic, messy confrontation that would paint him as the tragic hero forced to choose love over duty, and Eliza as the hysterical, scorned wife. Her icy calm disarmed him completely. Isabella shifted uncomfortably, her triumphant posture deflating slightly. The pitying and horrified stares of the guests were now mixed with something else, a dawning respect for the woman they had all assumed was crumbling before their eyes. Eliza didn't break her gaze from Mark's. She held it, letting the silence stretch, forcing him to stand there in the chasm of his own creation. The power dynamic had subtly but irrevocably shifted. He had created the stage, but she was now commanding it. "Is that all?" Eliza asked, her voice still unnervingly level. The question hung in the air, simple, direct, and utterly dismissive. It stripped his grand declaration of all its intended drama, reducing it to a pathetic, sordid little announcement. Mark stammered, caught off guard. "Well, yes." "Eliza, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but no, you're not," she interrupted, not with anger, but with the flat finality of someone stating an undeniable fact. "You are not sorry for what you did. You are only sorry that you thought I would make it easy for you." She took a step forward, and it was Mark who instinctively took a step back. She was no longer just the mother of his unborn child. She was an unknown quantity, a force he suddenly realized he had never understood at all. Her eyes, once pools of warm affection, were now like polished stones. She looked at his hand, still holding Isabella's, and then back up at his face. "You built your entire world on a foundation of lies, Mark," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. "And you chose to detonate it here today. You thought this would be my greatest humiliation. You thought you were destroying me." She paused, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "It wasn't pain. It was power. You have no idea what you've just done. You haven't destroyed me. You've liberated me." It was at that precise moment that Mr. Chin decided to move. He had seen what he needed to see. His daughter was not broken. She was forged. He began to walk from the edge of the garden, his steps measured and deliberate. He carried no folder, no weapon, nothing but the immense, crushing weight of his own presence. As he moved, a path cleared before him. Guests, who had moments ago been friends of Mark, shrank away. The atmosphere in the garden, already tense, became electric. This was no longer just a domestic dispute. It was a reckoning. Mr. Chin didn't even glance at Mark or Isabella. His eyes were fixed solely on his daughter. He came to a stop beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it was a coronation. He was not just comforting her, he was aligning himself with her, presenting a united front of unbreakable strength. The silent message was clear to everyone present. You have not just betrayed Eliza, you have declared war on me. Mr. Chen turned his head slowly, his gaze finally falling upon Mark. It was a look devoid of all warmth, the kind of look he reserved for a hostile corporate takeover. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, yet it carried across the lawn with the chilling authority of a judge passing sentence. Mark, he said, the name sounding like an indictment. For 3 years, I have watched you. I watched you charm my daughter. I watched you build a life with her. And I funded it. Every last piece of it, the guests leaned in, captivated. This was a side of the quiet, reserved Mr. Chen they had never seen. Mark's face paled. Mr. Chen, this is a private matter. It became my matter. Mr. Chen cut in sharply. The moment you decided to use my daughter's heart as a stepping stone and my money as your personal safety net. Did you really think there would be no consequences? He gestured vaguely around the pristine garden, at the beautiful house in the background. This house. It is not your house, Mark. It is owned by a holding company, a subsidiary of Chen Enterprises. The lease is in my daughter's name, revocable at my discretion. I am revoking it. A collective shudder went through the crowd. This was no longer about infidelity. It was about utter annihilation. The car you drove here today, Mr. Chen continued, his voice relentless, the one you like to show off to your clients? It's a company car. My company's car. The keys will be on my desk by morning. Mark was speechless, his jaw working but no sounds coming out. Isabella looked from Mark to Mr. Chen, a dawning horror on her face. The wealthy, successful man she thought she had secured was evaporating before her very eyes. Mr. Chen then turned his attention to Mark's mother, who was trying to shrink into the background. And you, madam, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. The condo you reside in, the one with the lovely city view? It was a gift. A gift from me to my daughter's mother-in-law, to ensure she was comfortable. Your comfort is no longer my concern. You will receive an eviction notice within the week. The woman let out a strangled cry, her face contorting in a mask of disbelief and rage. The foundation of their entire lifestyle, a lifestyle built on the Chen family fortune, was being systematically dismantled in front of 50 of their closest friends and family. Mr. Chen wasn't finished. He looked back at Mark, whose defiant posture had completely collapsed. He was just a man in an expensive suit, suddenly looking very small and very lost. And your company, Mr. Chen said, delivering the final, fatal blow. Your thriving marketing firm. Let's be clear. It has not turned a profit in 18 months. It has been kept afloat by a single, generous line of credit from a bank where I happen to be a majority shareholder. I will be making a phone call on Monday morning. I suggest you get your affairs in order. What little of them are actually yours. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of total devastation. Mark hadn't just lost his wife, he had lost everything. His home, his car, his company, his entire manufactured identity. He had walked into that garden believing he held all the power, only to discover he was nothing but a puppet whose strings had just been cut. Just as Mark seemed to be processing the full scale of his ruin, Mr. Chen did something no one expected. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a slim, leather-bound folder. It was not, as some might have guessed, divorce papers. It was something far more significant. He didn't open it. He simply held it, tapping it lightly against his palm. Mark, you made a grave miscalculation, Mr. Chen said, his voice now taking on a different tone, one less of anger and more of clinical explanation. Your mistake was not just in underestimating me. Your greatest mistake was in underestimating my daughter. He turned to face the stunned guests, his expression shifting to one of immense, unyielding pride. For the past year, many of you have seen Eliza as merely a supportive wife, a quiet hostess. You saw her step back from her own career to support her husband's. You mistook her grace for passivity. Her silence for a lack of opinion. He let his words sink in before continuing. What you did not see was the truth. Eliza did not step back. She pivoted. Every evening, after you thought she was merely planning parties or decorating nurseries, she was working. She was studying financial reports, analyzing market trends, and deconstructing business strategies. My strategies, a murmur of pure astonishment spread through the crowd. Mark stared at Eliza, his face a canvas of utter confusion. What? What is he talking about? He whispered, his voice hoarse. Mr. Chen smiled, a thin, sharp smile that held no humor. He's talking about me, Eliza said, speaking for the first time since her father had intervened. Her voice was strong now, infused with a new and undeniable authority. For the last 12 months, I haven't just been your wife. I have been my father's silent partner. His chief strategist, Mr. Chen nodded, tapping the folder again. This, he said, holding it up, is the business plan for Chen Enterprises' new global expansion into sustainable technologies. A venture worth 9 figures. And it was co-authored by me and by my daughter, Eliza Chen. He opened the folder to the title page, where 2 names were listed under the title, Jonathan Chen, CEO, and Eliza Chen, Chief Innovation Officer. The gasps were audible this time. Eliza was not the discarded wife. She was a C-suite executive of a global powerhouse. Her hidden talent wasn't a hobby. It was a world-class business acumen that her own husband had been too arrogant and self-absorbed to ever notice. You thought her quietness was weakness? Mr. Chen addressed Mark directly, his voice laced with contempt. That was her listening, observing, learning. She analyzed every deal I made. She found the flaws in your business model within a month of me funding it. She advised me to keep it afloat, not for your sake, but as a case study in mismanagement. You weren't her husband, Mark. You were her homework. The humiliation was so complete, so absolute, it was almost poetic. Mark had tried to expose Eliza as a weak, dependent woman and in doing so, had revealed himself to be a fool and a failure, while she was unveiled as a brilliant, powerful successor to an empire. The transformation was complete. The woman who had stood there just minutes before, the target of a brutal and public betrayal, was gone. In her place stood Eliza Chen, Chief Innovation Officer, a figure of immense and unassailable power. She took the folder from her father's hand, her movements poised and confident. She held it not as a shield, but as a scepter. Her eyes swept over the crowd, no longer the gentle hostess, but a leader addressing her audience. I want to thank you all for coming today, she said, her voice resonating with newfound strength. You came to celebrate a new life, and in a way, that is exactly what we are doing. Not the one I expected, but a new beginning nonetheless. A beginning for me, and for my child. She then turned her gaze upon Mark and Isabella. The fire of retribution in her father's eyes was replaced in hers by something far more chilling, indifference. She was no longer emotionally connected to this man. He was simply a problem to be solved, a loose end to be tied. Mark, she said, her tone businesslike, as the legal occupant of the house and the primary beneficiary of the trust it resides in, a trust established for my child, not for you, I am giving you 24 hours to vacate the premises. You will leave with your personal belongings and nothing more. Any attempt to remove assets belonging to the trust or to Chen Enterprises will be met with legal action. She then looked at Isabella, holding the other woman's gaze for a long, piercing moment. There was no rage, no jealousy, only a profound and devastating pity. You wanted him, Eliza said simply. And now you have him. Exactly as he is, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the character he has so publicly displayed today. I truly hope he is worth it. Because he is all you will ever get from me or my family, Isabella flinched as if struck. The fantasy she had built in her mind, a life of luxury, of status, of having won, crumbled into dust. She was left standing next to a man who was not a prize, but a liability. A man who had just been stripped bare, revealed as a fraud and a failure. Eliza turned away from them, a gesture of final dismissal. She addressed her shocked guests one last time. The party is over, she announced. But the celebration of my new future is just beginning. Thank you, as if on cue, 2 discreet but imposing men in dark suits, who had been standing near the property entrance, began to move forward. Mr. Chen had, with his typical foresight, brought his own security detail. They approached Mark and Isabella, their presence a silent, non-negotiable order. "Sir, madam," one of the men said, his voice polite but firm. "We've been asked to escort you from the property," Mark sputtered, his face a mixture of rage and desperation. "You can't do this. This is my home." "Eliza, tell them." But Eliza did not even turn around. She was already walking toward her father, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Mark's mother rushed forward, trying to plead with Mr. Chen. "Jonathan, please. Think of your grandchild. My son." Mr. Chen's personal assistant, a calm and efficient woman named Susan, intercepted her. She handed the older woman an envelope. "Mrs. Davenport," Susan said calmly. "This contains the formal notice of eviction, along with contact information for a relocation service we have preemptively engaged on your behalf. All communications from this point forward should be directed to our legal department." Defeated and utterly broken, Mark allowed himself to be led away, Isabella trailing behind him in a tearful, silent daze. The guests watched in stunned silence as the architects of Eliza's humiliation were unceremoniously removed from the scene of their crime. The garden, once a stage for betrayal, was now a testament to Eliza's incredible victory. The weeks that followed the disastrous baby shower were not a time of mourning for Eliza, but one of metamorphosis. The soft, flowing dresses were replaced by tailored power suits, custom-made to accommodate her growing pregnancy. The quiet, domestic world she had once inhabited dissolved, replaced by the gleaming glass and steel of the Chen Enterprises corporate headquarters. The news of what had happened at the party spread like wildfire through their social and business circles, but the narrative was not one of pity for Eliza. It was one of awe. She had not been a victim, she had been a queen reclaiming her throne. We now see her not in a sun-drenched garden, but in a state-of-the-art boardroom. A long, polished table is surrounded by seasoned executives, men and women twice her age, who all listen with rapt attention. Eliza stands at the head of the table, the leather-bound folder open before her. Her baby bump is prominent, a proud symbol not of a broken home, but of her dual future as a mother and a leader. She commands the room with an effortless authority that had been dormant for years, but is now fully awakened. "Our projections for the European market are too conservative," she states, her voice clear and confident. "The data indicates a much faster adoption rate for renewable infrastructure than we've accounted for. I want new models run, focusing on an aggressive Q1 launch. We will not follow the market, we will create it." Her analysis is sharp, her directives precise. There is no hesitation. The executives nod, scribbling notes, their respect for her palpable. She is not just Jonathan Chen's daughter, she is a formidable force in her own right. From the back of the room, standing by the panoramic window overlooking the city, Mr. Chen watches his daughter. The perpetually stern, unreadable expression on his face is gone. In its place is a look of profound, unadulterated pride. A rare, small smile touches his lips. He had always known the brilliant, resilient mind his daughter possessed. He had simply been waiting for the world, and for Eliza herself, to finally see it. He had not given her this position. She had earned it. The humiliation she suffered was not the event that made her strong. It was merely the catalyst that forced her to unleash the strength that was there all along. Later that day, Eliza stands in her new office, a corner suite with breathtaking views. It's minimalist and elegant, a reflection of her own focused clarity. She stares out the window, one hand resting on her belly. The baby kicks, a strong and steady rhythm, a silent conversation between mother and child. There is no trace of the heartbroken woman from the party. She is serene, powerful, and whole. Her phone buzzes. It's a message from an old friend who is at the shower. "Just heard Mark's firm officially declared bankruptcy. They're selling off the office furniture. Heard he and Isabella are living in a tiny apartment in the valley. Can you believe the nerve?" Eliza reads the message, and a flicker of emotion crosses her face. It is not satisfaction, not joy in their misfortune. It is a quiet, final release. Their fate is no longer tied to hers. They're a footnote in a chapter of her life that is now firmly closed. She deletes the message, turns away from the window, and gets back to work, building her empire, her future, for herself and for the new life she is about to bring into the world. The dust settled, as it always does. But the landscape it settled on was irrevocably changed. For Mark and Isabella, life became a harsh lesson in reality. Without Mr. Chen's funding and connections, Mark's business imploded in a matter of weeks. The charm that had once won him clients and investors was useless against bankruptcy filings and creditor calls. His relationship with Isabella, which had been built on the fantasy of a glamorous future, quickly soured under the strain of financial ruin and mutual blame. The grand romance he had declared in the garden withered into a bitter partnership of resentment and regret. They were left with exactly what Eliza had said they would have, each other, and nothing more. Their child was born into a world of struggle and instability, a stark contrast to the secure and prosperous future Mark had so arrogantly thrown away. His name became a cautionary tale in business circles, a man who flew too close to the sun on borrowed wings and paid the ultimate price for his hubris and cruelty. His public betrayal did not make him a romantic hero, it made him a pariah. For Eliza, life blossomed in ways she had never imagined. She gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl, whom she named Victoria, for the victory she had claimed on the day of her birth. Motherhood did not slow her down, it fueled her. She brought the same fierce dedication and brilliant strategy to raising her daughter as she did to running her division at Chen Enterprises. She became a titan of industry, known for her innovative vision and her unshakable integrity. She didn't just inherit her father's empire, she expanded it, leading the company into a new era of global success and ethical responsibility. She was a testament to the fact that a woman's strength is not a zero-sum game. She could be a devoted mother and a powerhouse CEO, her roles not competing but complementing each other. The home she had once shared with Mark was eventually sold, its memories exorcised. She and Victoria moved into a beautiful new house, one she bought with her own money, a home built not on lies, but on the solid foundation of her own hard work and resilience. Her father, Mr. Chen, became a doting grandfather, his stern exterior melting away whenever he held Victoria. In his daughter's triumph, he found a deeper joy than any business deal could ever provide. Eliza rarely, if ever, thought of Mark. He was a ghost from a past life, a lesson learned. Her pain had been real, her humiliation profound. But she had refused to be defined by it. She had taken the shattered pieces of the life she thought she wanted and used them to build the life she was truly meant to live. She had discovered that her greatest strength was not her ability to love a man, but her ability to love herself enough to walk away and build her own kingdom. She was not a woman who had been saved by her father, she was a woman who had been empowered by him to save herself. So, let me ask you again. What happens when your world is shattered by the one person who promised to protect it? Eliza's story gives us an answer. Sometimes, the most devastating betrayals are not endings, but violent, necessary beginnings. They are the forest fires that clear out the dead wood, making way for new, stronger growth. Mark thought he was exposing a weakness in Eliza. He believed her quiet nature, her gentle heart, her focus on their home and family were liabilities. But he was wrong. Those were her strengths. Her quietness was observation. Her gentleness was grace under pressure. Her love for her family was the very source of the fierce, protective power she unleashed that day. She taught everyone in that garden, and everyone who heard her story, a powerful lesson: never mistake kindness for weakness, and never underestimate the strength of a person who has nothing left to lose. Her journey reminds us that our true value is not determined by who loves us or who leaves us. It is determined by our own character, our resilience, and our capacity to rise from the ashes, not as a victim, but as a survivor, a builder, a leader. Mark's betrayal did not break her, it revealed her. It peeled away the role of the dutiful wife she had been playing and showed the world the queen who lay beneath. And in the end, that revelation was a far greater gift than his love had ever been. This story is for anyone who has ever been underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed. It is for anyone who has ever been made to feel small so that someone else could feel big. Remember Eliza. Remember that within you lies a strength you may not have discovered yet. The most painful moments in our lives do not have to define us. They can be the very moments that refine us, that show us who we are truly meant to be. Your worth is not negotiable. Your potential is limitless. Sometimes, you just need the right catalyst to force you to see it for yourself. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded of their own inner power. Remind them that they are the architect of their own future and that they hold the strength to turn their deepest wounds into their greatest victories. Comment below with a time you discovered a strength you never knew you had. Let's inspire each other.